What is up, everybody? It is Kovaz back again with some more gameplay and commentary. This run is actually quite old at this point. The reason that I ended up making this video is because we failed a 27 Galakronds that we got after a recent 2 chest on a 25 Black Rook hold, and I was not recording the run that I did, and I wanted to look back at a previous recording that I had, do some VOD review, see where I can improve, generally speaking, on the dungeon. 2 ways that you can start this dungeon. You can either do what we just did, which is invis or stealth all the way up to the boss, do the boss plus this pack, and then you hero on the boss. I think this is better on tyrannical weeks because it's much higher value hero because you get it on the boss and it gets on cooldown immediately. Second option is you can also just pull essentially all of the trash before the boss. It's a massive pull. You do that, and then pull the boss separately with no hero, since you would lust on the trash instead. Tyrannical weeks especially, this is much better. The sand stomps that come out, I should have done better. You could see that first one. I took a spot that should have been for melee. Ideally, as ranged, you want to be filling in the outsides of the room to give melee spots that are closer to the boss. So, you know, just little things to keep in mind. And then also just make sure that you're dodging the... So, like, here you can see that I go far this time, or at least further, to give my melee those close spots. Other things to look out for is the Epoch Rippers here. They're going to do a leap and spin. So just make sure that you're dodging those as they come out. There it is right there. The time rip. If those time poorly with boss mechanics, it can be really rough. So just make sure that you're on a hairpin trigger with your turtle or something similar. If you get caught in a bad spot, so like if you're trying to fill in a nook here with a sand puddle, and then they leap on you, and it's like, okay, I can't move anywhere. I've got sand to my right, sand to my left, a mob swirling on top of you with an axe. Just turtle it. But if you're not planning ahead for that kind of thing, you might freeze up in the moment. Just, you know, like, what is happening to me? How am I supposed to deal with this? Just turtle. It's that simple. And then other than that, all this boss really does is repeats the sand stomps and then does these leaps. Make sure that you do not get hit by these little things coming out. Those one-shot you on any real key level. And then also, after each leap, you can see something on the floor that's left over. That has to be soaked by a player. It doesn't do a lot of damage. It doesn't have to be the tank stepping in it. Even on like a 27, it's only going to do 20% of your health. Totally survivable. But if that does not get soaked, it one-shots the whole group. So do make sure, #1 priority, that someone is getting in each of those. He leaps twice, and there are 2 soak circles. So ideally, range gets in the first one so that melee can get in the second one, since that's where the boss is going to plant, and you don't want to lose up time. So the first section of the dungeon there is honestly pretty free, even on high keys. This is the section where things most often go wrong. There are just so many mobs that have high priority mechanics and very dangerous mechanics that it can be rough. So the coalesce time, you just need to make sure that you're kicking the volley. Right there, it was just going off. You can see our healer got it. Just never let a volley go off. That's a lot of damage. In this pack, you can also see that we have the coalesced time. Those are smaller mobs, or not coalesced time, sorry. Coalesced moments. Those guys just put a dot out, and it hurts. You can see I get it right here. It's a lot of damage. I see a volley maybe going off. I just turtle, because I'm like, I don't have kick. No one else is kicking. I'm already taking a lot of damage. I'm just sending the turtle. So yeah, things to watch out for. The leeches, they have a channel. It's called Enervate. Make sure you kick that. It does a lot of damage. If it's on you, you can just feint it. It's really easy to tell when it's on you. It's just a big sand time beam on you. So you can just feint it, and it cancels the channel automatically. The coalesce moments, those guys put the dots out that really hurt. If you get it, just use a defensive. The volley, make sure you kick it. And then the one last thing that goes out, and it's from the big guy, the same one that does the volley, is those big circles. Those circles can get dispelled. They do a lot of damage. Make sure that you spread. You don't want 2 of those on players at the same time. You don't want to be making an overlapping Venn diagram with people. But then the other thing to watch out for is when you're dispelled or when it fades, that big circle around you, it will activate any of these little untargetable sand elementals that are like all around me right now. and they will hit you. Like you'll be the closest thing, they'll hit you, and they really hurt. So make sure that when you spread to get dispelled or to let it time out, that you're using a defensive for one, otherwise you die. And for two, make sure that you are not overlapping with the sand elementals, and if you are, try to get as few as possible. And if you see that it's going to happen, just put a trap down so that the second it's active, it's trapped and your tank can pick it up instead of it auto-attacking you immediately. So right here, you can see that Coalesce Time is the main target that we want to hit. Leeches can be kicked really easily, or, you know, you just feign death, and the Coalesce Time is what puts out the Chrono Bursts that I'm talking about right here. You can see I activate that little Sand Elemental, so that's the most dangerous mob in this pull. So we're going to focus it, and we're just going to kick the Leeches, no problem, and also make sure we're kicking volleys. When it is a pull that has the Coalesced Time and the smaller mobs, the moments, we just focus the moments. Reason being, the Coalesced Time that does the volley and those circles has a lot more HP, and the moments, if you leave them alive for too long, your group is just going to rot, because they're going to put that dot out. It's not dispellable. It lasts for like 13 seconds, so it's really hard to use a defensive to cover the whole thing. Most defensives are not going to cover the whole thing. You know, like our wall only lasts for a couple of seconds, like half of that duration. So right here you can see going into this one, I'm just focusing the Coalesce moment, because that is what is going to kill. And you can see the dots on me. It is doing a lot of damage. And that's why we just focus those first. We just kill them, because if two of those are going out for the whole pack while you're focusing a different mob, you're just going to run out of offensives, and then it's time to pull the boss, and you're going to have nothing, and you can either sit there and wait for your defensives to come up before the boss fight, or, you know, just die, because you rot during the boss fight. So, for me at least, and in my experience, when there are moments in the pack, you target the moments. If there are no moments, you target the bigger guy, and you just balance back and forth. Neither is ideal. They're both really dangerous, but at least in my experience, the little guys are more dangerous, and they die quicker. So just kill them off first. So this boss gives a lot of people trouble. TLDR. Stand in the part that is not lit up, because you get damage reduction for the whole fight. Don't get hit by orbs, and when you get the chrono faded debuff on you, you want to make sure that you are doing two things. One, you need to make sure that you're in the light portion, and two, you need to make sure that you are not moving when the debuff either times out or gets dispelled. And you're going to see why, which we did not know a couple of weeks ago when we were doing this. But you can see I get the debuff, I go here. Okay, I turtle this one so we won't see it here. But essentially, if you're moving when you get dispelled and that wave is going away from you, you get hit by your own wave. You're not actually supposed to take damage from your own wave. If you stand still when it times out or gets dispelled, you take no damage from yours. So knowing that changes that mechanic from really dangerous to, wow, I'm really glad this went on me. It's actually more dangerous for people who don't get the mechanic, because they're going to get hit by both. If you get the mechanic, then you should only get hit by one. And so like right there, you can see both me and my rogue are moving when it times out or gets dispelled, and we took damage from it. If we're standing still, no damage taken. It's crazy how big of a difference that makes. Another thing to watch out for is just these orbs that come out when they're in the slow zone, the dim zone. They move really slow. When they're in the fast zone, they are almost undodgeable. And then right here, let's see if I plant. Nope. Again, we just learned about this in the last week, and this footage is a couple of weeks old. But it's one of those things that just adds up over the course of a dungeon. Like all this little knowledge, if you don't know that you can just stand still and take no damage from yours, you're going to run out of defensives twice as fast on this fight. And especially on high tyrannical, having defensives matters for this boss, because it's a lot of damage. Because when two other people get the debuffs, you're taking damage from both of them regardless, because that wave is going through you. So when other people get the debuffs, you want to make sure that you're popping something, because you're going to get hit by them pretty back-to-back. Not quite back-to-back, but within a couple of seconds. And if you don't have a defensive or a big heal for yourself, you're probably going to die from the second hit. But if it's on you, it's like, okay, whew, I'm only going to get hit by 1 instead of the 2. We can save our defensives, which would have been really helpful on this one, but it's a 25 and it's not tyrannical, and so we weren't getting one shot by our lack of knowledge. Right here, you can see that we take the portal, we all stand still, we don't move even an inch after taking the portal, then we do a pull timer. The reason being, that mob right there does not actually start flying in until someone moves after taking that portal. And so if we all just take that second, mount up, and then do a pull timer, so we all move at the same time, you can actually just scooch right around that mob. And for the percent that it gives, it is just too dangerous and too slow to be worthwhile. So if you have a rogue in your group, they can actually just like grapple forward and distract it, and it's even easier. You don't have to be quite as coordinated. Or, you know, if you have a rogue in your group, you can also just shroud by, I believe, although he might have true sight. So don't quote me on that. I don't run with rogues all that often, even though I am right now. On fortified, these are the most dangerous pulls. These risen dragons do insane spread damage to the whole group. You can see it just ticking, and when you do 2 of them together, you pretty much have to hero unless your healer is a complete Chad. And you can see BM is absolutely insane. Like, no AUG, I'm doing 2 million DPS because, like, really good changes, by the way, that Blizzard made to BM. Really good changes. The spec is so much more fun. Probably a little too strong, but, like, I love that we have a 2-minute button that we can press that's actually big, spiky damage like that. I've always enjoyed BM, but part of the reason that I had mainly played MM in the past is, one, it's stronger, and when you're pushing high content, like, sorry, it's almost a little selfish to not play the stronger spec, because you're doing group content, and it's like, well, I understand that you guys are trying to push higher, but I'm going to actively sabotage that to play what I enjoy more, which, depending on the level of content you're doing, totally fine. You know, if it's not especially hard and you're just vibing, enjoying the game, absolutely do that. But if you're pushing with a group and the consensus among the group is, hey, we want to push as high as we can, just do what's best. But coming off of that tangent, I really like the BM changes, because it used to be that BM was just, like, our damage chart was just a flat line, because the only cooldown that we had that was worth taking was Bestial Wrath, and it has something like 40% uptime with all the resets that we get, and so your damage is just constant, especially in a raid fight, like a single target raid fight. It's just a flat line. You're just doing damage the whole time, doing your rotation. And for me, at least, I really enjoy having that big 2-3 minute button that you can press that's like, okay, yeah, now we're doing damage. Now we're spiking. You get to see the big 2 million on the details. You get that dopamine hit. It's like, maybe the game isn't trash. I'm gonna keep playing. Maybe I'll do 2 million DPS again on the next run, and you just rinse and repeat. Stuck in that that cycle of torture playing this game. And here you can see we don't have, or we didn't have cooldowns. We didn't have heroism, so we just do the 1 dragon. Galakrond's fall is very, very lenient on the timer for this dungeon, so really it's just don't die and you'll time the key. So at least at this level, that's the case. At higher levels, obviously you're going to need to min-max everything to be able to do it, so you might have to do 2 double dragons and find some way to survive that. And, you know, that some way is pretty much have a better comp. It's like, okay, you're just going to have an AoE Evoker because they're going to make everybody tanky, and you're probably going to have a Vengeance or a Havoc Demon Hunter as one of your DPS, because they do a ton of damage and they're tanky. And then your third DPS, you know, maybe it's an Outlaw Rogue because they're tanky and they do damage, or a Mage, something similar. But TLDR, you just play better specs that do damage and are impossible to die on, like current Rogue and current Demon Hunter. But that's for like the bleeding edge, like you're pushing 28s, 29s, world first keys, right? For most keys, you can play something that's at least somewhat strong. Like right here, you know, we have a Rep Pally. They're not doing great. They're not awful. They're better in Mythic Plus than in Raid, I think. At least overall. They do lose a lot of single target getting their multi-target set up. But, you know, it just shows that you can push at least decently challenging content without being a complete slave to the meta. But there is a reason that the meta exists. And that's what I was talking about, where it's like, okay, if you're doing this on a high key where you have to min-max everything because the timer isn't free, like,
clear.
Sorry, you're just gonna have to play what is best, because that extra 5%, or even 2% per person. Like, let's say that everybody isn't on a meta role or a meta spec right now, and you could be doing 2% better per person that just swaps to what is best, right? Well, it's gonna be 2% overall, sure. But if you put that down to, you know, per person, like a group comp, it really adds up, especially on high keys. There's so many times that 2% makes or breaks it, and 2% is being forgiving. Like, it's more than 2%. But this boss, super simple. This is the most dangerous part of this boss, is this phase, the pulsing AoE that this dragon does when the winds are going out and the lines. That's when people are most likely to die. Once that's done, the fight's pretty free. The only mechanic that is repeating for this whole fight is that corrosion mechanic you can see right there. It just targets a random player. It's like a 1.5 second cast, and it does a lot of damage when you get it. So especially as a hunter, since we're kind of squishy, I do recommend, if that's going on you, use a defensive. And then once you have that, you want to pass it off to your tank, because what happens is, if that is not removed from a player within a certain amount of time, it mind controls them. Well, the breath, the frontal breath that the dragon does, it removes the debuff. So it goes on a random player, they give it to the tank stands on the frontal, and then the debuff gets wiped. One thing that you can do as a hunter is, when you see that you're targeted by that, and I did not know that when doing this dungeon, when you're targeted by that, you can actually feign it. So you can see for a split second, if you're targeting the correct mob here, when that corrosion is going out, it targets the person that it's going to go on. And if you're really quick and you feign, it'll actually just cancel the cast, and it goes on cooldown. It doesn't just recast on anybody else. When you get rooted, just make sure you save a disengage for it, so nobody has to swap. And you can even see what I'm talking about here with how free this timer is. Our pally dies very, very early on in this pull, or in this boss fight, and we're like, you know what? We're just gonna do it without him. We don't care. You know, we could have just instantly reset, but we'd already popped cooldowns, and realistically, knowing that the pallies are only battle res and he's the one that died, we should have just reset the boss. Because, you know, he would have been doing, gosh, probably 28% of, like 28% more damage here. And you can see here, I get the corrosion. I did not pop something, like I was talking about earlier. When you get the corrosion, just pop something. Like, just instantly use a defensive. It kills you very quickly, as you can see there. I had plenty of time to react, but if you don't know that it's coming, then that's going to cut down on your reaction time, because it's a process of not only, oh, this is on me, I need to press something, knowing that you need to press something, but it's also, oh, I haven't done this dungeon on a high key yet. You find out that you need to press something by it doing a lot of damage, and then you have less time to react, because it's like, okay, cool, the first 2 ticks that already got you super low, your reaction time window is now cut in half, because you spent half of it just saying, oh, holy shit, I'm dying. But like I said, you can also just feign death it. So if you see that going on you, just instantly feign. You do have to be really quick, because feign is not like an interrupt, in that, you know, you just press it, and that moment, like, the cast is done. You took care of it. The game has to have a little bit of time to essentially let it catch up, if that makes sense, where it's like, okay, you feign, and then it takes another half second for the mob to actually, like, recognize that you're feigned. It's weird. But if you feign at the last 0.2 seconds of that cast, it's going to hit you anyway, because it didn't catch up. It doesn't work like an interrupt where it just stops the cast. So, you know, if the cast is 1.5 seconds long, you're going to have to feign in, like, the first half second or so for it to work. But if you can do it, absolutely do it on that boss. It makes it so easy, because, like, there's no need for your tank to essentially clear it. The only reason that your tank has to clear it is because it went out in the first place. It's not like it has to go out in the first place for the boss fight to work. You just completely negate that mechanic by feigning it.
2,
so
1.
Zero downsides. It doesn't just go on somebody else. Just feign it, and it's done, and it saves your group a whole lot of trouble. There are a couple of different ways that you can pull this dungeon. So right at the beginning, you saw that we stealthed to the boss, did hero on the boss with the mobs. Another option that I talked about was just doing a whole bunch of mobs, hero on them, and then do the boss separate. If you do the whole bunch of mobs, you get a whole lot more percent. And so what we could have done, since we have a rogue, is do the whole big bunch of mobs, and then
3.
You skip this whole hallway, because you don't need this percent anymore. So you just skip this whole hallway with a shroud, or if you don't have a rogue, an invis pot and move speed. But just depending on your group comp, you know, some things are better, some things are worse. On fortified, which this is fortified, this is a couple of weeks ago.
2, 1.
Might even be better to just do the whole big pull and then hero on your trash percent, essentially. And then the boss isn't as dangerous, so you just do the boss without hero. Tyrannical, I think it's better to pull the boss
2,
with fewer things than you have the hero on the boss. But, you know, just little things you can change week to week that min-max your gameplay. Not really much to say on any of these mobs here. If you're targeted by any of the channels, you can just feint it.
2,
goes away.
1.
Make sure you're kicking the rock shards from the stone elementals. They do a lot of damage. And then it's just the epoch rippers here. They spin. One thing to note, which we did not learn on this key, but on a previous key, the servers were actually shutting down within like 2 minutes. We were like at this point in the dungeon, the servers were shutting down in 2 minutes. It was only like a 20 or something, and we were like, okay, like we gotta go. We want to complete this dungeon. So we pulled those chrono rippers into the boss. Never do that. Never ever do that. You can do that on the first boss. You cannot do that on this boss because there is a point where you all have to stack up when the boss is blasting right after extinction blast here. What happened to us is we were all stacked up and they span on us. So we were in here already taking a bunch of damage, and then they just, right here, since it always targets a player, they were just spinning with their axes on top of us and insta-wiped, which, again, we wouldn't have normally done that, but the servers were shutting down and we had no choice. Like, we had to go. So,
Shield.
You know, just little things to learn. Never pull those with the boss. A couple of things to note on this boss. The shield phase here, you can see the shield amount there on the right side of my screen. It's 13 million. There are a couple of different places where you can use hero on this boss. You can use it on a shield because it's just taking group damage, and you want this shield to get depleted as quickly as you can so that you don't run out of healing, essentially. Or, especially on higher keys, you can hero the last bit of the fight. The last bit of the fight on high tyrannical keys is actually somewhat hard because it's a tight damage check. The boss starts casting, and if you don't get the boss to a certain HP before that cast is done, he just instantly kills you. So on higher keys, I actually recommend saving cooldowns for the shields, and then saving hero plus cooldowns for the very end for that big final burn. Is dangerous. And, you know, the theme for this whole video, since this is a couple of weeks old, Mythic Plus was pretty darn new, at least for this season, is learning. It's VOD review, seeing what you can do better, and part of that is seeing what you've already learned. And it's like, wow, okay, from 2 weeks ago to last week, I already learned so much. And one of those things is that extinction blast. You saw it went on me at the start of the fight. You can just feign that. It doesn't retarget somebody. So when you get that big rock circle on you, just feign it. It does not affect anybody else. It's just less damage. And like, the boss is still going to follow up with the big
Shield.
4 spits in a row, but you won't have the dot on you, so you'll be a lot tankier for it. And like right there, I thought I was fine. Never assume you're fine. Just never assume you're fine. Obviously, you don't want to waste defensives on absolutely nothing. Like, don't defensive air. But if it's like, yeah, you know, like, there's a 50-50 shot that I survive this, just use the defensive. You know, and if you really want to, you know, risk it next time, at least use the defensive the first time so that you have more data going into risking it. So, like, right there, if I had used my 40% wall, and I'm like, oh, wow, okay, I used a 40% wall, and I still dropped to 10% HP. Kind of obvious going into the future that you're going to have a defensive for every one. If the 40% wall left you with 10% health, you're going to die with nothing. But, you know, like, let's say I used the 40% wall, and it's like, wow, okay, I still have 60% of my health left. Like, I'm chilling. Then you know that, okay, I'm going to save my defensive for if I'm targeted by Extinction Blast, I somehow don't have Feign, and I have the dot going into that, so there's extra damage, right? Just little things like that to to min max. Oh, yep, you can see right here. I feign it, and it just cancels out. So right here, this is what I was talking about, where you can save hero. This cast, if this finishes, you wipe. And it starts when the boss is at 90% HP. You have to get it to 85 by the end of this cast. And if you don't, like I said, just GG. You insta-wipe. This was actually a couple of weeks ago before they fixed it. And so, like you can see, I'm not doing very much damage, and this is close. We almost didn't get it. Reason being that before they fixed it, your pets actually didn't benefit from all the damage boost that you got from standing in the zone, which is ridiculous, right? But they have fixed that since then, so we're actually pretty good for the end of that. And another thing that I didn't mention, Hunter's Mark has insane value on that boss, because you're getting the full 5% for the entirety of the boss fight for your whole group. So make sure that you Hunter's Mark that boss. Make sure that you Hunter's Mark every boss, obviously. And honestly, just Hunter's Mark every big mob, like the mob you want to focus in a trash pull before you go into it. Ideally, you do that out of combat, so you're not wasting your global. But Hunter's Mark is really good. It's the only real utility that we bring, so just make sure you're using it. And yeah, a 2 chest multiple weeks ago on a 25. Galakrond's is so free. If you know what you're doing. If you know to feign the corrosion, it helps your group so much. If you know not to be moving on the second boss when the debuff is being dispelled on you, saves so much damage. If you know to feign the extinction blast on this last boss, saves so much damage. If you, as you know, 1/5 of your group is knowledgeable and does the research by doing VOD reviews or watching videos like this, it makes such a big difference. Like, imagine if every person, or even just the DPS, every DPS in this group knows something similar for every boss. That is so much damage that you are not taking, and that knowledge just stacks up. And it's the difference between a group, you know, doing a 22 and doing a 25. Is everybody just putting in that little bit of extra work, that little bit of extra research, bringing that extra knowledge, and then sharing it. And then, you know, in the next group, you share it with more people. And you're just hopefully getting some knowledge back from them. And that, plus, you know, personal gameplay improvement, really make a big difference. It's the difference between doing 20s and doing a 27 for a lot of people, is just consistently improving over time and amassing that knowledge and networking with people. So yeah, again, I hope you guys like the commentary. If you like this kind of video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe. It really helps with the algorithm. It lets YouTube know to promote this kind of thing, and it also lets me know that this is the kind of video that people want to see. And if it's not the kind of video you want to see, leave a comment. It's not going to hurt my feelings if you're like, hey, your commentary brought nothing of value. How about you do this, that, and the other instead? That's something that I'm going to consider. And if I agree, I'm going to make videos that are giving what you want, essentially. I just want to put out good content. I want to be helpful to the community, and hopefully I'm doing that. So again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.